Kia ora team, Chris Farhi here. Hope your lockdown is going great. So as promised, during the lockdown period, I'll be pivoting the vlog more towards news updates and less towards intensive filming of projects around Auckland, just so that we can all avoid a dose of COVID. So that said, this week we'll be looking at the biggest real estate development news over the last week. First up though, in my last vlog, I put an invite out there for you to comment on any projects around the central city, and what I'll try and do is take a quick snap of them while out exercising. So first up is a request from my #1 most favourite subscriber, Yang, who's also my wife. So she requested a photo of Ferdy Madden down at Wynyard Quarter. So here's a quick snap here. You'll notice here that they've taken the wrap off stage 2 of the development. So scaffolding's come down and that's looking super cool. So yep, looks great. Next up, a quick shout out to Stefan on YouTube, who requested a snap of Seascape. So Seascape is an apartment development down on Customs Street East in the central city. Now the building will be slightly taller than Pacifica, which you can also see in that photo on completion. So we're talking a massive building, and as you can see, it's starting to get some pretty good height up, and it'll be really cool when the facade starts to come in on this one, so stay tuned for that. Next up, Julian over at YouTube requested some snaps of the CRL stations. So what I've got here is some of K Road and of Altea station. Now I must admit this was a complete mish because I had to run up a massive hill to get to the K Road station, but I'm sure Julian was just trying to keep me fit in doing that, so thanks very much for that. And so what we've got here are some pics of the K Road station, the Mercury side of that, and also the Burford Square side. And then after that we've got Altea station, and so sort of various snaps around Albert Street, and you can see just the complete mess of works down Albert Street at the moment, but as they go they seem to be sort of opening and closing different parts of that street, so hopefully they can kind of clear out a lot of that over the coming year or so. So look, thanks very much for those requests. Always good to get out, get a little bit of fresh air. And so with that said, let's jump to the news. So probably the biggest announcement this last week was by Auckland International Airport, who announced that they'll be developing a 100-store retail outlet precinct. And so the idea here is to get a bunch of premium fashion and lifestyle retailers together and offer up product at discounted prices, so sounds awesome. The development itself will be a circa 23,000 square metre retail precinct, and they've described it as being developed on the undeveloped land at the northeastern edge of the airport. So let's get the satellite image up. Okay, cool. So here's the airport, northeast, so it's somewhere in there. And so 23,000 square meters is pretty hard to sort of visualize, but just for reference, Sylvia Park, which is obviously a humongous shopping center, so that's about 86,000 square meters. So this will be just over about the quarter of a size of Sylvia Park. So we're talking a really big development and a really nice addition to their portfolio. Next up, Lamont Co announced their next residential development in Auckland, which will be Symphony 303 in Epsom. So this is a 43 apartment development located in Epsom, obviously. Unit sizes ranging from 43 to 111 square meters, and pricing from about 650,000 through to 2.275 million. Now the media reporting didn't state the address directly, but luckily the scent dog and me jumped onto that 303 in the project name, and so it looks like it's located here. Now I remember when I was in New York, one of the things that a developer said to me was that parks sell apartments, and one of the interesting things here is that you've got the Pocket Park just around the corner from the development, but you've also got the Cornwall Park Trust Board's massive revamp of the Campbell Crescent entrance to Cornwall Park, which is basically across the road. So that development looks like it's probably going to sell like hotcakes. Really cool location, good transport links to the city, so yep, super excited to see that one sell down and for it to be developed. Next up, we're heading south into regional New Zealand with another apartment development, and this one's interesting because you quite often think about developments around Auckland, so you know, apartments being pretty standard sort of product these days, but maybe not so much in regional New Zealand. So this next development is the Dawson Apartments in New Plymouth, and so this is a 6 apartment development on a corner site in New Plymouth. Pricing's interesting, so $1.1 million to $1.3 million, and construction due to start shortly. So this one's interesting, and it has some parallels to an apartment development in central Hamilton that was in the news media recently, which apparently was getting really good demand. And you could definitely see how if you had some of the aging population in different parts of New Zealand who want to downsize, maybe don't want a big piece of land or a traditional house, and so the ability to get into some nice, well-located apartments could be really attractive. And the pricing's interesting because it's not super cheap, you know, like 1.1 to 1.3 is actually decent. But I guess if people are selling reasonable houses, then yeah, it's probably a pretty easy way to downsize and get something new and shiny and warm without breaking the bank. And so next, heading overseas, a couple of interesting developments. So the first is a big apartment development by Gallery Group in Surfers Paradise. Now this one was interesting in terms of intensification. So the project's a 35-story, 102 apartment development, features mainly 3-bedroom apartments with a small number of 2-bedroom apartments. And so the interesting thing here was the intensification. So the media reporting talked about how this development's basically transforming an existing site which is built up on 5 villas, so like 5 houses put together, and they're putting this massive apartment tower on it. So that one's pretty interesting in terms of, I guess, scale of transformation. Something that's also quite interesting in the media reporting is it talks about how the building will have an extensive glass facade. And so when I think about glass facades on apartment buildings, one of the concerns that I'd really have would be about solar gain. And so basically the idea is you've got all this glass around the apartment and it creates almost like a glass house type environment. But one of the interesting things that you can see within one of the images is this little stripy design. And I assume that that's a frit pattern, which is something that I kind of learnt maybe a year or two ago, which is where they put a treatment on the windows, which then is typically in strips or similar designs. And what it helps to do is cut down on solar gain and glare. So moving from a sort of traditional project into 2 slightly untraditional projects. So the first is the conversion of a former Airforce Command Centre in Michigan into a data centre. And so they talk in the article about how this will be a tier 3 mission critical data centre. So it talks to like a very high level of resilience. And it makes a lot of sense to use something like that, because the article also says how the command centre hadn't been occupied since 1995. So you have like a very large, robust building, probably well located, you know, resilient, probably really good infrastructure. So it makes a lot of sense to be able to convert that into a slightly different use. And, you know, obviously data centre is a growing area all around the world. You know, in New Zealand we're starting to get some big ones. But definitely in the States, you've got a lot of the big tech companies that are calling for heaps of data center space. So thought that was interesting. And then finally, on our untraditional projects, we've got the conversion of a jail into a hotel. And so the project here is conversion of the Bodmin Jail in Cornwall in the UK into a 70-room hotel. And so the commercials on this one are pretty interesting. The article talked about how the project had cost about £71 million for 70 rooms, so it's just over £1 million per room, and had taken 5 years to complete. So you're talking a very time-consuming and expensive project. Reason why is heritage, and so the jail was last used in 1929, and the project involved preserving a bunch of the heritage elements, joining up 2 different wings of the jail, adding a glass foyer entryway, and then conversion into the actual hotel usage. Now ratios wise, this is interesting. Apparently 3 jail cells equals 1 hotel room. So that's kind of useful to know, maybe not. And so that wraps us up for this week's update of the biggest real estate development news from New Zealand and around the globe. If you want to get some more details on those, pop into either the description in YouTube or onto LinkedIn, and you'll get my latest posting with links to each of those articles. Hope your lockdown goes great, and we'll see you next time. Cheers, bye.